Hi, my name is James Gurney. I want to do a test drive of a Jeep, but here's the twist. Because I'm an artist, I want to imagine the ultimate off-road driving scenario, and that's what this painting is right here. And I want to do this painting with old school techniques on location at the dealership, and I got to work quick because I've only got about an hour before the sun goes down. Okay, we're almost to the Jeep dealer. I hope they have a good one for us. We're gonna make this Jeep famous. Okay, so there we go. What's new in the 2020? I have no idea.
You can read the sticker. I don't know.
$59,000, about $60,000. Jeez, where do you put the key?
You push the button.
×2. Press this twice to start.
You push that button, the engine start.
Oh, okay.
Put your foot on the brake.
All right. We're free and easy. Here we go. Well, it feels pretty nice to drive, but the guy tells me I can't have it for 2 hours to paint it, so I got to find one parked on the lot. This Renegade's pretty neat. Not the most off-road of all the Jeeps, but it's at a good angle. Yeah, this should be good. So this is a perfect car to have as my model because it's up on a ramp so I can see the underside. All I have to do is cut away the ramp and it'll be flying through the air. So let's get started. The thing that hits me is that when you're driving one of these cars, you're not just driving the car, you're driving the dream behind the car. In a case of one like this, the dream is that you're off-road, you're ramping it across the air, you're maybe fording streams. But in reality, even though this thing is made to handle that kind of stuff, most people's lives are a lot more just commuting and traffic jams. But still, those dreams are important, and I think that's one of the reasons you still have vehicles like this. But that's what I want to do in this painting, is try to capture that fantasy using the elements of the real world and try to transform this car sitting in a parking lot or sitting at a showroom and make it, you know, in the middle of that fantasy, maybe ramping or fording or something like that. So I'm going to start by using a tracing grid, and that grid will give me a real shorthand for the basic outline of the pose, and then I can trace that down onto my sketchbook page. The tracing grid, or sighting grid, is an age-old device used by artists as far back as Durer and Da Vinci and Van Gogh. And what I'm going to use it for is to get the basic lines of this car. I only have about an hour to work, and I want to put my time into painting. This saves a tremendous amount of time from the other tools you could use, which would involve measuring with a pencil. If you've watched my videos, you've seen me using the sighting grid on a few subjects. Mostly I don't use it, but I use it when I'm doing a car or a sign in perspective or some antique toys I'm not familiar with. And it's especially helpful for a car because people who own this Jeep Renegade will recognize if it's the least bit out of drawing, and it's easy to make errors if you're working quickly. Now the red lines are drawn with an erasable chalk marker, and I made the wheels lower. I lowered them down and canted them inwards a little bit from the way they looked on that ramp. Now on that clear acrylic sheet, I drew a grid using a Sharpie permanent marker, and I've drawn a corresponding grid on this paper. And by copying what appears in each square, I can easily transfer this drawing down. This whole process of transferring the drawing takes about 15 minutes. So it's 1/4 of my time, roughly, that I've spent on the drawing. The surface of the paper was pre-primed with casein. Casein is a water-based paint with a milk-based binder. It's an old-fashioned paint. And the nice thing about it is if I put some wet paint over it, some wet opaque watercolor, I won't pick up that sky color. I'm using a small palette of gouache and watercolor, and I especially need the cadmium yellow so that I can warm up the white on those really hot highlights. Now I'm using a big flat brush, a synthetic, and I'm starting with a weird place, the highlight. I want to make sure that whatever else I do on this painting, that I emphasize the brightness of that highlight, because that's the way it looks to me when I look up at the car. Now, Paint Sniffer has a question. He said, how do you keep your gouache wet, or do you not? I find it difficult to get a nice thick and opaque layer when the paint dries on the palette, and I reactivate it with water. Yes, I agree, Paint Sniffer. In dry climates or for longer sessions, you can squeeze the paint out on a slightly damp piece of paper towel, and that'll last much longer than if you just squeeze it straight out on your palette like I did here. I'm not facing too much direct light, sunlight, which would dry it out, so I'm okay with that. But I find that once it's dry, whether it's from a tube or even in a pan form, the gouache tends to not liquefy to the consistency that I'd really like for painting. So I just squeeze out more paint if it dries up too much. Lou Me asks, do you clean your palette after you're done painting? I know I can re-wet the dried paint and reuse them, but I found that I always use different colors, so I don't think I can reuse them frequently. Yes, I definitely bring my palette home. I close up the metal box, and when I get home, I open it up outside on the faucet and re-wet the paint and then scrub it off with a discarded scrubby brush. Now that I've done the highlight areas, that hot, warm highlight and then those cool up-facing planes, now I can paint those darker shadow values. Better get the spacing right on that 7-slotted front grille that's so characteristic of the Jeeps. I'm usually shooting all my videos myself with this camera mounted on an extension bar. But my son is helping me with some artsy shots, like the dolly zoom effect. But I want to get the camera really close in, and to do that it almost means you have to block your view with the camera a little bit. You can do a lot of areas like this with a pretty big flat brush. I have a list in the description for all the materials I'm using. Michael Buchanan says, this may seem like an obvious question, but why do you choose opaque gouache over transparent watercolor? And the truth is, Michael, I use them both, watercolor and gouache together. And you may have noticed I hardly make a distinction sometimes, because modern gouache is really very similar to watercolor. The grind is slightly different, but basically they're both very pigment-rich water mediums that use gum arabic as a binder. And some watercolor is actually more opaque than some gouache, like some of the earth reds. Venetian red, for example, is a fairly opaque color in either one. The thing is that gouache used to be a much more of a designer color, and it used to have more opacifiers, more things that make it opaque added in. Now the manufacturers, for the most part, prefer to let the user decide if they want it to be opaque or not by adding white. And if you add white to either watercolor or gouache, it becomes more opaque. So as you can see here, I'm starting out fairly transparently in those dark areas. When you use the paint transparently, you get natural variations. You see those brush strokes. And once you start adding more opaque pigments or adding white in, you can raise the value and even out the value. Okay, sounds good. I gotta have the, this is where the ramp cuts out and the thing is pulling along a bunch of dust and stuff. It's been kicking up a bunch of stuff here.
Yeah, the fire being pulled back by the wind.
Probably instead of fire, it'll just be dust illuminated by that light.
Oh, okay.
Otherwise, yeah, it'll look almost like, I mean, you won't be able to tell the difference hardly. Now the light's coming from the left, so the forward side of that jump is going to be more in shadow. So I'll put some shadow there and just try to put some tone over the background. I don't know what this will be yet, but I'll figure something out. Okay, now I want to spend a little more time kind of finessing some of the details while I have the car lit the way I want it. That highlight area on that window is so bright that it raises the values of the dark, like the rear view mirror and the areas of the windows and the A and B pillars. So that will flare out. Some of you asked why I have that watch there, and that's mainly just so that you can see how much time has elapsed during the whole process. Also so I can keep the clips in order. For this phase of the painting, I can switch to smaller brushes, mostly round synthetic brushes. And with gouache, I can experiment with things, like I can make that far silhouette lighter with an opaque mixture, brushed lightly over the top, just to see how that works. Kind of like that, it gives some depth. I need that dark mass on the left to set off the really brightly lit, illuminated area at the top of the windows. And I want to suggest the ramp down there as if the car is leaping off into a big space. Now maybe I can get a little bit of camera blur here, as if the camera that's filming this is twisting to the right with an open shutter. And I can have some white dots back there, or maybe this is the far bank hit by direct sun. Using the corner of the brush for a kind of random effect. Now what I want to do is paint the background with something that's plausible for a car that's moving fast with the camera moving. So right now I'm painting this telephone pole with a little bit of blur effect so that it looks like the camera that's filming this whole scene is swinging to the right. So to do that, I wet the surface of that casein priming with water. And as I lay strokes down into that slightly wet surface, I can soften those edges. I can add a lighter blue color for that transformer, which would be in shadow, but it would be lighter than the pole. Soften that vertical edge using the edge of a big flat brush. In any painting like this, you kind of have to choose which area you really want to have for your focal point area, where you want to place the most detail. So here, of course, it would be the front of the car and the details of the car. And the rest of the details are painted much more broadly and out of focus. And that's part of what adds to an impression of a photographic look, is having that depth of field and the motion blur, which are effects that artists don't very often pick up on. Now I want to come back into the front of the car and get those details on the front bumper, kind of the honeycomb molded area below the license plate. And then I can use a little bit of chalk. This is new pastel. And just a hint of this will give a feeling of a lens flare. I can sort of soften it with my finger. Don't want to overdo this, but it's a nice effect that makes it look a little bit like airbrush or something. Okay, thanks for watching. You might want to check out my website or subscribe to my channel. And then here's a playlist with more good stuff and a video that continues the story. So check them out and share with your friends.